I'm looking for the actual desk time, and holy moly, 4 hours, 55 minutes. Guys, I've been using the same time tracking software for more than 8 years. In terms of dedication to one software, I feel like that's pretty major. And as you might be able to deduce, that software is DeskTime. Over the years, I've also become significantly busier, yet still able to get the growing amount of work on my plate done during the same amount of hours. I started out as a part-time marketing employee, have since started my own e-commerce store, gone freelance, and then also founded my own business with an ever-growing amount of work. Something must be working. I'm going to share with you the 6 main approaches I used that have made the biggest difference in how I approach time management. Identifying my productive peak hours and guarding them like my life depends on it. This one's probably the most recent addition to my time management arsenal. A few weeks ago, you saw me testing different hacks to hack concentration. I discovered that my concentration is much more powerful in the morning than in the afternoon. As a result, I began to block off my morning hours exclusively for deep work, while taking calls, schedule meetings, and performing more menial tasks in the afternoons. And this is something I've kept doing. Here's what it looks like in real life. So it's the end of the workday for me right now, and I'll be coming in the morning. Why the morning? Well, because I had identified in one of our previous videos that those are my most productive hours. So I will be trying to get in tomorrow morning as early as possible, and not taking any calls or meetings during those hours. My very first rule was to identify my peak working hours and guard them like my life depends on it. The question is, did I manage to guard them like my life depends on it? Well, I have to report that today I did not. Here's the situation. I got to the office nice and early, just as planned, and then there was a client who we had been trying to meet for 2 months, and they finally became available, but they were only available at 9:30 in the morning. And it was just that kind of moment where you can't win all of your battles. As a result, I do feel like I didn't really manage to get all that much done. Of course, it was necessary, but I definitely didn't spend it doing deep work like I had intended on. There's room for improvement there. Now it's about lunchtime, and yeah, definitely not that feeling of accomplishment that I was hoping for. Another day, another week of trying to guard those morning peak hours, and I am pleased to report that so far, so good. No morning meetings planned, and I've made a point to schedule all this week's meetings for afternoons. That way, staying on top of and keeping those morning hours totally clean just for my personal me time. It's a work in progress, can't always be done, have to leave some wiggle room, I guess, for unforeseen circumstances, but practice makes perfect. Trying and making an effort is a whole lot better than having no approach at all. Highly recommended. Take a look at your productivity stats, see when you work best, and try and isolate those hours for your own deep work time. Using break reminders to get up and take a break. We conducted an experiment isolating the most productive people using DeskTime and tried to find what they had in common. The result was they took frequent and long breaks, on average working for 52 minutes and then breaking for 17 minutes after that. If you're interested, we have a dedicated video to this research. We'll link it in the description below. Anyway, the main takeaway was that in order to stay productive, you need to give your brain ample time to relax and recalibrate, so that you can return to your next task with your batteries charged. I have been at the office for a while now and have just been working away, and I have just had a pop-up show up from DeskTime, which I have set to pop up for every 52 minutes of intense work, and that pop-up has just come up. indicating that it is time to take a break. My coffee happens to be empty, so I figured I'll show you what my break looks like. Let's go. I might be weird, but I dilute my coffee with some hot water because I really like coffee and I like drinking it a lot, and so I just dilute it to make it last longer and so I can drink more coffee. That's normal, right? So I've got my coffee. I'm in our kind of kitchenette area of this co-working space that I work in. Shout out to Darbavieta, it's pretty cool. So what I usually do during these breaks is I get up. That's like first major rule, to physically get up and leave your computer. That's the whole point of taking these breaks, is getting away. I mean, it's strenuous just to be sitting for 8 hours a day. So what I like to do is use this break time to stand up and kind of exercise those muscles. That's my recommendation. The break after the 52 minutes of hard work should be pretty long, ideally 17 minutes. So I'm just gonna hang out here for a little while and then go back to the office. So there you have it. That's how I use my break time reminder, which is built into DeskTime. You can set it at different intervals. I set it at 52 minutes based on our previous research, and I highly recommend it. Identifying my go-to procrastination websites and then blocking them. I used to majorly struggle with procrastination. In retrospect, I most commonly procrastinated because of a fear of the task, of perhaps not knowing how to go about it, or maybe because of an underlying imposter syndrome. And I found that the best way to deal with these mental blocks was to confront them. But it's much easier to click over to your go-to procrastination sites, be it social media, YouTube, email, or my Achilles heel, the news. To deal with this, I went to my DeskTime account, selected the monthly view, and identified which websites are the ones which take up the most of my time, which aren't necessarily productive. I downloaded a website blocking app, listed all of my identified unproductive time sappers, and then when I'd have to address a task that I was putting off, I would simply use the blocking feature. It's the beginning of the afternoon on a Friday, and this is a natural period of time where the mind starts to wander towards weekend plans and whatnot, but I still have a ton to be doing today. So this is the perfect time to give this method a try. I've gone ahead and downloaded an app on my computer. It's called Self-Control, and it's just a website blocker. So I've added all of these domains to the block list, and then you set a period of time to block these websites. You can't access them, and essentially it forces you to just stick to the websites that aren't, procrastinatory. So now I'm clicking start to start my 2 hours of blocked procrastination websites. Let's see how it goes. Just taken you a second, but it's taken me a few hours. I have just completed a few hours of having blocked my personal procrastination sites. And let me tell you, I'm feeling good because I have gotten so much done, which is in stark contrast to this morning, as you know, which was, maybe not the most productive. So what happened was I was able to move along a project that's been waiting for a few weeks. Finally got over my kind of mental block. I even published a blog post that I've been working on, literally, I kid you not, at least 3 months. So got over that hurdle, it's published, it's out in the world, feeling good about it. And honestly, it's because of that little push from having blocked those procrastination websites, and not just any websites, but the ones that are like my procrastination websites. So How did it go? I mean, I did find myself every once in a while, like your fingers just automatically type in the websites that you're used to. For me, it's just like an automatic habit when you kind of don't know what to do next, or when you're a little stuck, your fingers just automatically start typing like Facebook or Twitter, and then you just end up in this huge rabbit hole of news and updates and notifications and feeds and whatnot. And then every once in a while, I would just butt up against notifications saying, website could not be loaded. It would take like a few seconds for me to just kind of jolt back and remember that, oh yeah, I blocked them. And then you kind of return to your task at hand kind of sheepishly, because it's kind of like being caught by yourself. Anyway, so that's my take. This works. So find your own personal procrastination websites, get some kind of app blocker, and watch your productivity soar. Adjusting my arrival time to better suit my hours of highest productivity. This one is kind of in tandem with the first method and has to do with identifying my most productive hours, which DeskTime told me was in the morning. Now, I used to think that I was a night owl because of how much I loved to sleep in, but it turns out that I'm actually most productive when I get to the office early. So I learned to get to bed earlier, wake up earlier, get to work earlier. That way, I not only get the most out of my morning hours, but I also get to leave earlier, which leaves more time for leisure and relaxation. Take a look. I definitely did try. That being said, there were a few setbacks. Notably, a foot injury. Today, however, was the first day that I made it to the office at 9 o'clock on the dot. And let me tell you, it feels great. And I was able to get so much done, and the office was still kind of quiet. And it's just, you're alone with your thoughts and your major task at hand, if that makes any sense. Again, this is something that is a general goal for myself, not immediately implementable like that, but definitely something I'm going to continue working on. And I do recommend it to others to identify when your peak hours are, and then adjust your work hours accordingly. Actual time spent working, major wake-up call. This one's a bit tough and can be a bit of a wake-up call. How many of you work a set amount of hours? For example, 9 to 5. Does that mean that you're just at the office from 9 to 5, or are you actually working? Here's the thing. The amount of time you spend at the office is not a direct measure of how much you're working. In fact, you might be quite surprised when you see how many hours you're actually spending at your desk versus at work. On DeskTime, I can see 3 different key statistics: the amount of time I'm at work, which factors arrival and leaving time, the amount of time I actually spend at my desk, and the amount of time I spend productively, which is an entirely different metric. If you're confused as to why you're unable to make progress on some projects, you might be interested in taking a look at your time spent actually working. I feel like I have been working all day long, albeit with a few breaks in between among the workday. And so now I figured it's as good a time as any to try out that point about checking actual work hours spent, because even though I've been in the office all day, I don't feel like I've had meaningful progress. Let's see if my data shows us otherwise. Clicking show desk time, and I'm looking for the actual desk time, and holy moly, 4 hours, 55 minutes. That's not even 5 hours of actual work. That also explains a lot about why I feel like I haven't made meaningful progress towards anything. True, there was a longer lunch break, long story involving artisanal bread deliveries. It was delicious. #worth it. You can also see various clumps of empty time, I guess like meetings that I didn't have scheduled, kind of impromptu ad hoc calls with clients. I feel like this just goes to show that just being physically in the office all day doesn't necessarily equal productivity, and that one thing that is worth looking at if you're trying to understand where your time is going, it's worth taking a look at actual time you spend at your desk. because it can be a little bit shocking.
Conducting regular experiments to understand what works for me. Over the years, I've conducted a lot of personal productivity experiments. In fact, we have an entire video on experiments we've conducted, as well as how to set up your own. The result is I know exactly what works for me and what doesn't. For example, I know that alternatives to sitting on a chair at a desk, like using a standing desk or a yoga ball, provide quick bursts of concentration, but aren't the best for creative tasks. As a result, I've been able to continually adjust my time management habits to suit my personal, unique preferences and even tweak them as time goes by, because we all change. And I can do all of that because I have a plethora of personal data on how I spend my time at work. I would highly recommend everyone to start tracking personal time spending behavior so that you can set up your own experiments, learn from them, and become better at managing your time. One of the ways that I consistently improve my productivity using time tracking software is by conducting regular experiments to see how and when I work better and best. And to be honest, this past week hasn't been one of those times that I've had the chance to observe my work behavior and based on like a specific new change. So I don't have personally any new experiments that I have conducted. However, a colleague, Iva, had mentioned that she had noticed that she feels a little bit like a lower energy level at around 4 o'clock. And so based on this observation, we came to the realization that maybe 4 o'clock is the perfect time for an afternoon walk around the park that's just outside of our office building. And how did that go, Iva? Good. There we go. It went well. Consider how you're feeling and adjust as necessary as time goes by. So that's that. What a week it's been. So let's go through the different points to see how it went. The first one was identifying peak hours, and we had already identified them in a previous video. We knew that my personal peak hours are in the morning, and that these hours should be guarded like your life depends on it. It happened with mixed results this past week, but I think the most important part is to acknowledge that these hours are important, and as a result, try and keep them as free as possible, accommodating for real life, of course. The second was using break reminders, and breaks are the bomb. Everyone should use breaks or make use of breaks and take breaks as often as necessary. And especially for those kinds of people who get into the zone and kind of forget that they're working hard, maybe they would benefit from having a break reminder pop up every once in a while. Then the third was identifying procrastination websites and then blocking them. And holy moly, was this effective. Now, this is not something to constantly have turned on because our mind does have to wander every once in a while, especially for those people in creative roles. But when it comes down to getting shit done and having to churn out and reach those results, then this was a very successful method, and I recommend you try that for sure. The fourth was adjusting arrival time. This was also mixed results this week. I would like to put the blame on this injury, but of course, the blame is also on my own shoulders. That being said, it's good to know and be aware, and the days where I was successful in arriving earlier, then those days really did feel that much more productive. The fifth was taking a look at time actually spent working. Now, this was a major eye-opener, and I feel like this would also be a major eye-opener to a lot of other people who perhaps don't really see where their time is going thanks to not using these kinds of transparency time tracking apps. And it really does show you how much time you're actually working, and you know, that can be a really big surprise to some people. It definitely was to me, and then it also helped me better understand which meetings I'm taking, what breaks I'm taking, as well as which days perhaps I should put in a little more focused work to compensate for those
those longer absences. And finally, conducting regular experiments. Now, this is something that I do all year round. Do what's necessary, take the breaks you need, so that you can work to your full potential. So there you have it. 6 specific ways that productivity software has helped improve my time management skills. I hope you found this useful. If you'd like to get started on your own, I highly recommend trying out DeskTime. There's a link in the description for a 14-day free trial. See you next time.